Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
Hey everybody, it's 420 somewhere, which means it's time for our two favorite reprobates to get high, roll tape, and let the chips fall where they may. That's right, it's the Mitch and The Junk show, so toke 'em if you got 'em, and if you don't got 'em, I know a guy. Give it up for Mitch and The Junk.
Oh, I never get tired of that introduction.
No.
Good job to the maestro.
The maestro.
Coming up with a worthy theme song.
Yeah, he knocked it out of the park, man.
Now, the first thing I want to tackle
Now, I
today.
hate to
Yeah,
bring up the elephant in the room.
I know where you're going with this. It appears that Susan Sarandon, age 69,
69.
made an appearance last night
Oh, she
at
sure
the
did.
SAG Awards, wearing a blazer, which nobody had a problem with, but underneath that,
Yeah.
all she was wearing was a black bra, a boulder holder, if you will,
Oh, really?
and she wore that during her presentation, which was fine. I mean, she's 69, she's still beautiful, still rocking that body. But it just so happened that she was basically up there to present an in memoriam segment. And a lot of people thought that maybe that was an inappropriate.
Oh, fuck them. Fuck them. Man, I tell you, man, nothing heals death like a nice set of titties, man.
Yeah,
I swear to
exactly.
God, every funeral, somebody should
Hey.
take their top off. I think that it would solve most of the problems in the world. What are you doing, man?
I'm just dropping an email to our t-shirt guy, letting him know to press up a few t-shirts that say, "Nothing heals death like a nice set of titties."
Where'd that come from?
From you.
No shit. God damn, I'm a genius.
Okay, I would be remiss in my duties if I did not show off a few of the photos. The first one, of course, is from the actual SAG Awards in memoriam segment.
Whoa,
Susan, of course, is
man.
looking very, very sad, distraught even, perky, but distraught. Second photo is her with a younger dude. Now, I don't know if that younger dude is her son or some dude that she's going to nail later on that night. Either way, I'm jealous of him because right now his eyes are staring at really one of the most iconic sets of boobs in the
Indeed.
business. I would like to go on record as saying that it was Susan Sarandon and Catherine Deneuve who together in the movie The Hunger,
Right.
which I was watching for David Bowie, of course,
We both were.
they completely stole the movie with a love scene that ended kind of badly for one of them, but
Yeah.
up until that point was
Take a
very
bite out of crime.
titillating. And it has always been my go-to when I need to,
She didn't say it.
well, one of us has to keep it dignified.
Quick, give me some more pictures.
Yeah, check this one out.
Damn, the woman.
Yeah, I don't know who she is. I wasn't able to find out
Yeah, she's
in any of
working
the
it.
publications that I checked before we went on air, which doesn't bode well for her because she's basically being shown up by a 69-year-old woman.
Your grandma
And,
is kicking your
One
ass.
of the most iconic racks in Hollywood.
Amen to that, brother man.
This weekend, apropos of nothing,
Apropos of nothing, who are you, man? You get on the radio and you start talking like Sir Laurence Olivier or some shit.
I'm just trying to make a dignified, yeah, you're right. I'm full of shit. So anyway, it just so happens the junk and I got kind of high,
Understatement of the year, man.
and we had an argument about which era of AC/DC was the best. Now, I am more in the Bon Scott
No way,
school
man.
of thought, and I just think that AC/DC pretty much died when Bon Scott died.
I, on the other hand, am thinking that AC/DC truly did not become the great monolithic juggernaut until Brian Johnson came into the band. And it's no fault of his that Bon Scott died, and he was forced into this, I shouldn't say forced, he was thrust into this position of basically filling in for the most one-of-a-kind rock singer that had come down the pike in some time, and he did it admirably. I mean, he fucking nailed it and took AC/DC to the next level.
Being that I discovered AC/DC during the Bon Scott years, that remains my favorite period for the band, but it's not just some sort of sentimental attachment. This is a band that back in 1975, with no one to follow, basically created punk in Australia. It wasn't called punk at the time because it had more of a blues element than the one that was taking place in England. So therefore, it really wasn't taken seriously. And in fact, the band did not even hit the charts in America until 1977. That was about their third or fourth album. And even those records were only in the bubbling under part of the charts. They did not hit the top 100 until Highway to Hell, ladies and gentlemen. That's a pretty sad statement of how slow we American music fans can be to discovering a band. And maybe it was the fault of the record company at the time, because I don't think Atlantic, even though they were putting the records out, they didn't really seem very committed to the band right off the bat. I think simply because they were that far ahead of their time. They were punk and blues, had very upbeat tempos. I mean, were really going for broke, and they had kind of a barroom stomp about them. This was a band that you knew could hold their own in any situation, because I think they've been there.
Maybe there's a reason those early albums weren't a hit in America. Maybe we are just a better judge of character than the Australians are. I mean, think about it. They're in the middle of fucking nowhere, man, and it's like 14 hours away, man. Ain't nobody keeping up on what the Australians are doing until it's so damn good that it busts through the door. And that's a sad thing, because, you know, there's a lot of good bands that we will never know about. But I also think that, you know, you don't make it in America until you're ready to make it in America.
Oh, I know some people who would consider what you just said fighting words, my friend.
Hey, they know where to find me. Bring it on. The truth is that AC/DC was making records back when other bands were still cutting their teeth, you know? I mean, they came out way too early.
Really?
And I think they were very much under the tutelage of their older brother, George. And since he was in the Easy Beats, he had the reputation, he had the clout.
Yeah.
And so they knew that, you know, by embracing him, that they would get that much further ahead. It would be stupid not to take advantage of
Sure,
that, and they fully did. But I really think that their stuff was very embryonic during that period.
I think you're full of shit.
Okay, you tell me the one defining album of the Bon Scott era.
There is no easy answer, because he's all over all of those records. He makes every album special for a different reason, because like the rest of the band, he is progressing. I mean, he starts out obviously very rough around the edges, but you can see him kind of, you know, you're being kind of a dick right now.
Look, man, I'm not begrudging you your love for Bon Scott, but I'm telling you, man, that Bon Scott was second level all the way. He was rough around the edges. He was not something that radio was ever going to respond to.
Are you out of your fucking mind?
And that's sad, because I like him too. But here's the thing. Back in Black was the whole fucking package. Completely radio ready from the first boom.
All right.
And, you know, without Brian Johnson, they would have remained just kind of bubbling under.
You do realize that AC/DC's Highway to Hell, featuring Bon Scott, did actually hit number 17 on the U.S. charts.
I did not know
the
that.
band truly broke through with Bon Scott. There was no being held back by in fact, I think that Bon Scott was someone that the world would have fallen in love with 10 times more than Brian Johnson. Through no fault of Brian Johnson. He's
Well,
a
of
nice
course.
enough guy, but Bon Scott was a born entertainer. And I think that the more popular they would have gotten, the more popular he would have gotten. You look at Noddy Holder from Slade. I mean, he is literally a religious figure.
Completely
in the
unknown
UK.
in
I think
America.
Bon would have been that in America, in the UK, Australia, of course, and around the world. I mean, if Iron Maiden can fly around the world playing to stadiums full of just crazy rock and roll fans, then by all means, the Bon Scott era AC/DC could have as well.
All right, man, but let me ask you a question.
Fire away.
Would they have made Back in Black with Bon Scott? Could they have made Back in Black with Bon Scott?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, in fact, he was in England to participate in the recording process. He had given the Young Brothers a head start. They had gotten there and they were working up musical beds over which Bon Scott would then write lyrics and sing. So I think either that day or some day or so before his death, he'd actually been with the rest of the band, and they had run through 2 songs that would later become Let Me Put My Lovin' to You, Babe, and Have a Drink on Me. Of course, they weren't called that at the time because that was because Brian Johnson ended up writing the lyrics. So my opinion of Back in Black is that it might have never happened, because I like to think that Bon Scott would have kept the guys honest, and he would have said, look, dudes, these songs are too slow. I mean, if you listen to that record, the whole thing just plods. It's just I mean, it's like, come on, man. During the Bon Scott days, you had, a whole lot of Rosie, Problem Child. I mean, those songs moved, baby. Moved. Rock and roll, baby. But, the whole direction of Back in Black ended up being so forced and so strategized. Because, during the Bon Scott days, they basically recorded an album by going into the studio and just rocking through the songs, looking for an off-the-cuff performance that just had some fire to it. Back in Black, though, they mapped everything out down to the crash cymbals. And so there was no spontaneity. It was all mapped out, which was the way that their producer, Robert John Mutt Lang, preferred to work.
All right, so you're saying that because Bon Scott wasn't there wasn't anybody to keep them honest, and therefore the tempos suffered.
Exactly.
And Brian Johnson being new to the band and
Right.
having really no say,
Exactly.
wasn't able to say, hey, dudes, it'd be nice if you could bump these tempos up a little bit.
Right. Sadly, we'll never know because Bon Scott died before the Back in Black sessions could ever begin, thanks to a supposed friend by the name of Alistair Kinnear, who had gone out socializing, a.k.a. drinking, with Bon the night of February 19th, 18th, somewhere in there. And Bon Scott ended up passing out in the passenger seat of his car as they were driving home. And since they were both pretty wasted, Alistair was unable to move him and decided, hey, it's very cold outside, this being February in the UK. Temperatures below freezing. I'm just going to leave him out here to sleep it off. I'm going to go inside myself where it's nice and warm and just, sleep. So you got Bon Scott unconscious in a car that is below freezing. Sober or not, you're dead if you're out there long enough. And that's the thing it's a criminal act on Alistair's part, if you ask me. Because you can't leave people in a car unconscious when the temperature is below freezing. And I don't care what you've got to do. I don't care if you've got to call somebody to help you lift Bon Scott inside. That's what you do. And that's the thing that just, I can't get that out of my mind.
Yeah, that does sound like a textbook case of negligence, if nothing else.
All I know is that if I had any friends like Alistair Kinnear, I would be dead too. Because, I mean, we've all gotten wasted. We've all passed out. And we've all had friends literally save our ass. I've had people I barely knew who took better care of me than Alistair did Bond. I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
I mean, I literally owe my life to some pretty much total strangers.
Oh, some
or,
beautiful
my best
ones.
friend of friends.
Yeah.
And that's just because they're the people that look out for other people. And God bless every one of them that has had my
Amen,
back.
brother.
I try to pass it on and do the same. For those unfamiliar of the details of Bond's death, I actually stumbled upon an interview that Alistair Kinnear gave to Metal Hammer magazine in the UK back in, I think, 2004. And I wanted to just read an excerpt from it because I found it to be pretty enlightening. And here goes. It was a great party. Bond and I both drank far too much, both at the free bar backstage and at the upstairs bar as well. However, I did not see him take any drugs that evening. At the end of the party, I offered to drive him home. As we approached his flat, I realized that Bond had drifted into unconsciousness. I left him in my car and rang his doorbell, but his current living girlfriend didn't answer. I took Bond's keys and let myself into the flat, but no one was at home. I was unable to wake Bond, so I rang Silver for advice. She said that he passed out quite frequently, and that it was best just to leave him to sleep it off. Silver, of course, is the sometime girlfriend of Bon Scott at the time. I then drove to my flat on Overhill Road and tried to lift him out of the car, but he was too heavy for me to carry in my intoxicated state, so I put the front passenger seat back so that he could lie flat, covered him with a blanket, left a note with my address and phone number on it, and staggered upstairs to bed. It must have been 4 or 5 a.m. by this time, and I slept until about 11. When I was awakened by a friend, Leslie Lodes, I was so hungover that I asked Leslie to do me a favor of checking on Bond. He did so and returned to tell me my car was empty. So I went back to sleep, assuming that Bond had awoken and taken a taxi home. At about 7:30 that evening, I went down to my car, intending to pay a visit to my girlfriend who was in the hospital, and was shocked to find Bond still lying flat in the front seat, obviously in a very bad way and not breathing. I immediately drove him to King's College Hospital, where Bond was pronounced dead on arrival.
Wow.
Oh, man, I mean, that's just heartbreaking, man.
Man, what amazes me is how quickly they bounced back from such a huge blow. I mean, Bond died in February,
Right.
and the album came out in July.
Yeah, that's pretty
And that's a
amazing.
fucking rush job, man. I mean, they were completely inspired. I mean, it's not like they put out a crap
Right.
album. I mean, just to not only, regain your bearings, find a new singer, start writing songs together, record them. I mean, there's no way that a normal band
Right. Yeah, that's
could have
pretty
done
amazing.
that in such a short amount of time. The
Yeah.
only band that could have done it was AC/DC. And to this day, I do not know why they were in such a fucking rush. I mean, it's kind of weird.
Okay, getting back to the discussion, under Bon Scott, we have an AC/DC that put out TNT, High Voltage, Powerage, If You Want Blood, and Highway to Hell. Each of those albums has at least one stone cold classic that AC/DC has to play every night. Every night. And you can't say that for the Brian Johnson years.
Oh man, you could not be more wrong. First off, the only album that Brian Johnson needs to prove that his era is better than Bon Scott's era is Back in Black. Back in Black is the only AC/DC album anybody needs. So, I mean, they may as well have not even made any more records because they created the very template for AC/DC on that one record. There was no topping that because it was a perfect record.
Well, that would be fine, except for the fact that Highway to Hell is a perfect album. and that, like I said, Back in Black is flawed because of the tempos being completely dirge-like. I mean, it was just thundering, plodding, 43 beats a minute. Just boring, Therefore, each era must be judged on all of the respective albums. Every album that Bon Scott sings on adds up to the Bon Scott legacy. Same case for Brian. Unfortunately, there's albums on Brian's side that nobody even knows about.
But just 'cause they don't know about them don't make them any less great.
No, the albums themselves do. I mean, you look at Flick of the Switch with its hand-drawn album cover. That pretty much says everything. That says, we sold 40 gazillion copies of Back in Black. We sold maybe half of that on For Those About to Rock. I don't think we really want to try very hard because we literally blew our left nut out on For Those About to Rock, which is a better album than Back in Black. There I said it, ladies and gentlemen. Anybody who knows their stuff prefers For Those About to Rock to Back in Black. And that's because For Those About to Rock does actually have some songs that kind of build the tempos back up to where they used to be. But it's weird, the production is still kind of metallic, whereas back in the Bon Scott days, prior to Mutt Lange arriving on the scene, the band had kind of a blues swing to them, and that was completely gone by the time of Back in Black.
Well, that's because blues had been done to death. I mean, AC/DC were smart enough to always be ahead of the curve, and they knew that curve was dead, man, because it had been played out. Nobody needs to hear any more blues rock. I don't know about you, but I mean, that's what the 70s was to me, and that's what punk washed away. But AC/DC lived through that, where lesser bands were washed away. I mean, look at Queen. I mean, they were on top of the world, but punk single-handedly made them completely out of step and undesirable.
I think you are out of your mind, brother man.
AC/DC, on the other hand, with Brian Johnson in a new sensibility that was less weird and creepy.
You just call Bon Scott weird and creepy.
More, everyman. Where every person in that stadium could connect with Brian Johnson.
I work in a factory, too.
Although lovingly at Angus Young's schoolboy character.
Yeah.
But, it was Brian Johnson that put that cherry on the ice cream sundae.
Dude, he won the
It never
lottery.
would have happened without him. But the thing was that the Young brothers had left the blues behind. They were now a juggernaut that was like a Sherman tank that was just rolling over stuff and unstoppable in every way. So, that they had to leave the blues behind, it's a small price to pay, and I think the proof is in the pudding.
Oh, if only that were true. What a lot of people forget is that Back in Black came out in July of 1980. And in April of 1981, a little album by the name of Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap finally came out in America. This was an album that had kind of trickled in over the years via the import section. And it was always, for me, it was a little rich for my blood because it had an import price of, about double what a regular album costs. So that was prohibitive. But by the time it came out in America, people could not buy that thing fast enough, and it sold 6 million copies, even though, truth be told, Atlantic Records still didn't put their heart into it. They kind of treated it as a posthumous release, nor did the band tour in support of it. So the fact that it sold 6 million copies, I think, adds further credence to Bon Scott's legacy, and also disproves your point that people were done with the blues rock aspect. I think the Young brothers gave up on it before the American public really wanted them to, based on their response to albums like If You Want Blood. I mean, that was pretty much a greatest hits album for us kids because we were familiar with those songs. If we weren't already, we were by the time AOR radio got done playing about half of that album. Most importantly, you had Let There Be Rock and you had Whole Lotta Rosie, both pretty much straight up blues rock songs.
Okay, is Back in Black in your top 5 best AC/DC albums?
Yes.
What about For Those About to Rock?
Yes.
Okay, so we've just established that 2 Brian Johnson albums are in your top 5. That kind of shoots a big hole in your theory that everything Bon Scott touched was gold,
Well,
man.
truth be told, the only reason that I put Back in Black in my top 5 is because I can't deny that it's a good record. But for me personally, it's not in my personal top 5. From a critical standpoint, I'd have to put it in my top 5. I think it's required of any discussion that Back in Black belongs in the top 5, even though for me, there are 5 other albums I find myself listening to more often. So here we go in order from 1 to 5. The best AC/DC album, number 1, Highway to Hell. Number 2, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Number 3, For Those About to Rock. Number 4, If You Want Blood. And number 5, Let There Be Rock. What's your top 5?
Well, naturally, number 1, Back in Black.
No
Number
surprise.
2, Back in Black.
Come on, man.
Number 3, Back in Black. You see a theme here, man? Alright, seriously, no. Number 1, Back in Black. Number 2, For Those About to Rock.
All right.
Number 3, ooh, it's getting
Drum
kind
roll,
of tough here.
please.
I'm going to go with Blow Up Your Video.
Whoa.
Number 4, what record is it that has, It's a Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll?
Oh, you got High Voltage there.
Okay, yeah, High Voltage. And number 5, Black Ice.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm serious, Black Ice.
Unbelievable. Okay, what are your top 5 songs?
Ooh, let me see. Off the top of my head, I'd have to go number 1, Hell's Bells.
Really?
Any song you need to make a custom full-size church bell for to play live belongs in my top 5, baby.
Can't argue there.
Number 2 would be the aforementioned It's a Long Way to the Top.
Oh.
I love School of Rock, and it brought that song to my attention, so thank you very much, Jack Black.
Yeah.
Number 3, You Shook Me All Night Long. I mean, it's an okay song, but it's the song the ladies like the most.
Oh,
so
that's for
therefore It's
sure.
in my top 5 because I'm all about the ladies.
You and I
Number
both.
4, Thunderstruck, because hockey games, obviously. And number 5, For Those About to Rock.
Oh, yeah.
A wayside nurture.
Oh, sounds like you've been practicing.
All right, man, hit me with your top 5.
I was afraid you were going to ask me that because I
bet
find
you
it very
were.
hard to narrow it down with AC/DC because there are so many good songs.
Sure.
Just off the
Yeah.
top of my head, I would have to go number 1, Touch Too Much, followed by number 2, Walk All Over You. These are back-to-back songs on Highway to Hell, side 1. And to my ears, at least, it's one of the best 1-2 punches in all of rock and roll. Number 3 would be Night of the Long Knives, which is off of For Those About to Rock, so that's a
Well, there
Brian
we
era
go,
song.
baby.
Number 4, we got Problem Child, my theme song. It's a song that speaks to me on a very real level, but musically it's very simple, and yet it's so effective, and the song never gets old. Number 5 is Evil Walks, another completely
Well,
underrated track from For Those About to Rock. So despite all my
yeah.
words to the contrary, there are 2 Brian songs in my top 5.
I rest my case.